Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in just a minute and let people filter in. Great. Well, it looks like we've reached a steady number for now. So I will go ahead and kick us off so we can move on to the meat of the event. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today for our Lunch and Learn. I'm Louise Bedsworth. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Law, Energy, and Environment, or CLE, here at Berkeley Law. As many of you know, CLE is a policy research center that helps to link the expertise and creativity of the Berkeley Law community and the broader campus to deploy practical and pragmatic solutions to environmental and climate challenges. We work with government, business, and the nonprofit sector to help address urgent problems that require innovative and often interdisciplinary approaches. And we draw on the combined expertise of faculty, staff, and students across the UC system, as well as community partners and others. So through our Lunch and Learn series, we host nearly monthly conversations on a range of environmental topics, unpacking complex and pressing policy issues, presenting new research findings, and sharing about programs like we're going to do today. Our Lunch and Learn series is made possible through the support of our partners, Wilson Sonsini, Oric, and Hanson Bridget. I'm really excited about today's Lunch and Learn, which is going to focus on a really innovative program hosted here at CLE called GrizzlyCorps, which is an AmeriCorps program. Ken Alex, who's the Director of Project Climate and the creator of the GrizzlyCorps program, as well as other AmeriCorps programs, is going to lead today's discussion, where we will hear from Josh Fryday, who leads California Volunteers, Eliza Munger, who directs the GrizzlyCorps program, and then Karen Lopez, who is actually a GrizzlyCorps fellow. So we'll get to hear about this program from top to bottom. And so really excited about today's discussion. I will hand it over to Ken.
Thanks, Louise. And hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. One of my favorite topics, as Louise says, I helped start 4 AmeriCorps programs at this point. So near and dear to my heart. We have a great set of speakers today and a little different program delving into a particular project. Josh Fryday is the Chief Service Officer. He's the head of California Volunteers. He's the former mayor of Novato, served as the president of the Golden State Opportunity, which led the expansion and implementation of California earned income tax credit. And prior to that, he served as the chief operating officer for Next Gen Climate. Josh also served in the military. He was a naval officer and part of the JAG Corps. And of course, his biggest claim to fame is that he received his law degree from UC Berkeley School of Law. Josh is going to talk broadly about AmeriCorps and other programs, particularly around climate and the role of volunteerism in California. We're going to be joined also by Eliza Munger, who's the director of GrizzlyCorps. She oversees and coordinates all operations for GrizzlyCorps and is really sort of the heartbeat of the organization. Before joining CLE, Eliza worked for Playworks, a youth development nonprofit. Eliza's worked in the nonprofit sector in a range of roles, from leading trips in the Grand Canyon, Yosemite, and Olympic National Parks to facilitating service learning trips abroad. Eliza's dedicated her career to engaging youth and young adults in service, civic action, and the environment. And she holds a BS in biology from the University of Puget Sound. She'll talk about how GrizzlyCorps works, what it's trying to do, and how it's going. And then we have Karen Lopez, who's a GrizzlyCorps fellow with the Sonoma County Resource Conservation District. Karen is a recent graduate of Fresno State. She has a BA in agriculture education with an emphasis on communication and leadership development. Karen grew up in Sonoma County with hands-on experience and exposure to the agriculture industry through 4-H, FFA, WG Edge program, and the Sonoma County Farm Bureau. All of these experiences have influenced her passion for Agriculture Advocacy and Resiliency. And she'll talk about her experience as a fellow and her work at the Sonoma RCD. As you'll hear today, it's interesting and sometimes challenging mix of federal, state, university, and local entities working towards stronger communities. So with that, Josh, hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ken, for that introduction. And it is so fun to be here. So I'm just gonna try to contain myself, not to just yell "Go Bears" every few seconds. But I get to talk about two of my favorite topics today. One is service, and we're gonna talk about why and what that means for the state of California. And then two is Cal, which we get to talk about how this is intersecting in a really powerful way. And we're creating really exciting models for service, for civic engagement, and for climate change, quite honestly. So as Ken said, my name is Josh. I get to have this really cool title of Chief Service Officer. I bet you, many of you did not know you had a Chief Service Officer, but that is my title. The governor created a cabinet level position because he really wanted to think about how do we reimagine civic engagement? How do we rethink what it means to call on Californians to take action, to serve each other, and how do we build communities and connect people in new ways, in stronger ways, so that we can solve some of our biggest challenges, climate being amongst one of those top challenges, as we all know very well. So I'll just share very quickly my path to get here, and then a little bit about what we do and why we're so passionate here in the governor's office about doing this. As Ken mentioned, much of this started when I was a law student at Berkeley, and I was studying very much focused on energy law, on climate law. Professor Farber was a professor of mine. Several other people you all would recognize, and was studying it. But it was also at a time in our country's history where it was post 9/11. We were living through the war on terror. John Yoo was a professor. We were living through Guantanamo and these big issues that were happening around the world. And I started to really think about what role we all had as individuals in our democracy and in these broader policy arenas that were happening. And I started to feel very personally that I couldn't just be upset about what was happening with our foreign policy, with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which were going terribly wrong, with what was happening in Guantanamo. I actually had to do something about it and have some skin in the game, because that's what it means to live in a democracy. And so between my second and my third year of law school, I commissioned as an officer in the Navy as a JAG. And then after graduating from Berkeley Law and passing the bar, went off and did 2.5 years in Japan, where I was stationed in Japan for my first duty, and did a whole variety of everything from court martials, so trial work, legal assistance work, international law, was part of the Fukushima nuclear disaster and humanitarian aid relief effort, which became the largest military aid relief effort of its kind. And then after that, was detailed to be a defense attorney to represent a detainee in Guantanamo, where I had a client who had been detained for over a decade without any charges, and was in what was called indefinite detention. So I had a chance as an advocate, not just to represent him, but to testify in front of Congress about Guantanamo. And so I share all this because it was really an informative part of my journey, service experience, where I learned not just how powerful it could be to work with people side by side, with people who have very different backgrounds, very different perspectives, very different experiences, to create something really good, to actually do good in the world, and to have a common experience that forged a common bond for people that I still feel very close with. And I still have an automatic bond with other veterans that I meet to this day, even if I never served with them. We just have that common experience. And so fast forward, when I got out of the Navy, I came back here to California. I started working with somebody named Tom Steyer, ran and helped build an organization called Next Gen Climate, where we were focused on back on climate change. How do we change the politics and the policy of climate? And in that work, I started to see how people were so passionate about climate change, and people were either they were inspired to do something or they were scared and frightened about what the future held, but they wanted to do something. And I felt like too often in the climate movement, we didn't have an answer to the question for somebody, what can I do? What can I do in my life? What can I do to actually be part of the solution, which people are so thirsty for and wanted to do? And so it was after this that Governor Newsom started running to be governor of California, and he's someone who cares very deeply about service and about volunteerism and civic engagement. And we started to talk about and think about the fact that we do live in such a polarized society. We see in our politics every day how divided we are, how isolated we are from each other, disconnected. And this is even long before COVID. And started thinking, what could we do that to bring people together, to bring Californians to build community, but also to deal with solutions on big things like climate change. And so we started to think, well, we have to, in addition to building and leading on huge policies that California always leads on, thanks to people like Ken Alex and his colleagues who have been leading on these huge policies for a long, long time. We actually have to figure out, how do we mobilize people? How do we actually take advantage of what we often talk about as our biggest asset in California, the 40 million people who call California home? And so we started to think about, how do we create service programs, programs like GrizzlyCorps, which we're going to talk about today and hear about, one of the programs we're so proud of, that really have multiple purposes. They can bring people together to take action together, to have common experiences, to do the kind of work we're going to hear about from Karen today, but that also empowers people and gives people something proactive and positive to do around things like climate change. So in addition to all the AmeriCorps programs like GrizzlyCorps, which we're so proud of and has done so much already and has helped launch careers and has had a huge impact in communities throughout California, we also created the country's first statewide climate corps, which was this idea of how do we actually give people something to do. We've had hundreds of climate fellows across the state of California already organizing in communities. We created a program called College Corps, which I call the California's GI Bill, where we're providing debt-free pathways to students who, if they commit to a year of service, 450 hours, they receive up to $10,000 towards their education to help pay for school, and a third of those. So right now we have about 3,000 students in the program around the state. A third of those are actually doing climate related work. They're taking climate action in communities. We've created a jobs program whereas College Corps for college track students, we have a jobs corps, which is really focused on creating service and meaningful opportunities for our low-income youth, our foster care youth, our formerly incarcerated youth that are having a harder time getting into the workforce. But we wanted to create meaningful service experiences for them that not just created economic opportunity and gave them a pathway to career, but actually created a pathway to a meaningful life of purpose and dignity around some of these issues. So if you take all of these programs that Governor Newsom has helped lead and that we've launched to California volunteers over the last few years, all of our AmeriCorps programs like GrizzlyCorps, our Climate Action Corps, our College Corps program, our Jobs Corps, if you take all that and add it together, and in California right now, we're actually bigger than the Peace Corps. And that says a lot about the value and the investment that Governor Newsom's making. So, and I'll just finish by saying, because I want to bring this back, because everything in my mind comes back to Cal. That a lot of these programs that I just listed, all of these great service programs that were possible, have been led by, in our office, Tara, whose daughter is working right now at CLE and is helpful in pulling this whole webinar together. So thank you, Maya. Thank you to your mom for helping lead things. All roads lead back to Berkeley, at least in my selfish mind. And it's really fun to be with you all here today. Thank you.
Hey, Josh, we got a question in the Q&A when I should have mentioned everybody. I'm sure you know by now, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A or in the chat. It says, in your research, did you encounter the public trust doctrine or its history in California environmentalism from the cellular decision to Mono Lake and beyond? I can answer that if you, but I feel certain you can answer.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to brush up on my legal work before this call, and so I might be unprepared. So Ken, I'm gonna punt that one back to you to take on.
Yeah, just I suspect there are people on this Zoom who know this as well as I do, but the public trust doctrine has been around for a very long time and basically says that the sovereign state of California has certain obligations on behalf of the public to protect the environment. It's usually applied to water, and particularly at the ocean, at the shoreline edge. Very famous case in California for Mono Lake, expanded it to freshwater at Mono Lake. And actually yesterday, a trial started in Montana around climate change and the obligation of the state of Montana to protect the public trust in relationship to the environment and climate change. So it's a live doctrine. It has application in California. Whether it goes so far as to give rights to people in relationship to climate change is a whole other discussion that we might do in a lunch and learn in the future. So with that sort of tangent, Eliza, over to you to talk about GrizzlyCorps.
Thanks, Ken, and thank you so much, Josh. I am actually going to share a few slides because, as I like to say, GrizzlyCorps is its fellows. And so I want you all just to be able to see, our GrizzlyCorps fellows. Amazing. So I had the honor of being brought onto GrizzlyCorps actually just before our launch. Ken had spent well over a year designing the program, starting to develop some of our partner sites and really bringing the idea of GrizzlyCorps together. And our program was entirely designed with the intention to uplift and support local communities while also developing the next generation of climate action professionals. And so I came on about 6 months before we launched in the fall of 2020 to start our first cohort of fellows. We started with 20 full-time fellows across the state of California. And we're now about to finish up year 3 of the program and already planning for year 4. So I'm going to give just a high-level overview of the program, some of the things that we've been doing for the past 3 years, and maybe we'll even have some time to talk about where we hope to go to next. But GrizzlyCorps sends out recent college graduates every year between September and July to serve across the state of California. Our fellows provide capacity building services for agency with a focus on regenerative agri-food systems, forest and fire resilience, and even some of our projects this upcoming year will also have a focus on groundwater sustainability and community drinking water. We've had fellows actually in over 27 counties across California. Our upcoming sites that will be launched in the fall of 2024 or 2023 going into summer of 2024 are shown here. So you can see that we have fellows placed all the way from Siskiyou County down to San Diego County. We have a site up in the Sierra Nevada, and then fellows placed all throughout the state. And the reason why we have such a broad placement of fellows is because we want to be involved in important work happening across the state, primarily in rural California. So even most of our sites that are focused in the Bay Area are actually benefiting larger scale California and mostly primarily rural California. The model of our program is to build up local communities through capacity building. So all of our projects look completely unique. Our fellows are involved with research, planning, implementation, as well as education and outreach projects. And then our program also seeks to build fellows as professionals and people. So we host orientation and service events. We have monthly cohort trainings with guest speakers. We also have external trainings we allow our fellows to participate in. And then we also have placements with highly supportive supervisors that are willing to provide the on-the-ground critical professional development opportunities. But as I said, our program is our fellows. So just wanted to talk a little bit about, our GrizzlyCorps fellows. We're really proud of deepening our community ties and working hard to build an internal culture that makes our program more accessible and a program that all young professionals would want to spend a year of service with. Some of the ways that we've really focused on this is having host sites throughout the state of California, as I mentioned, bringing on a huge array and diversity of projects, leadership, and communities. We also focus on creating and inviting an inclusive cohort experience for all fellows, including a curriculum catered towards young climate resilience professionals. We really seek to create a container for relationship building, not just among the cohort, but relationship building in the communities fellows placed with, the agencies that they work with, and beyond. And we also have developed clear workforce pathways for our fellows as well. Part of what we've done in the past year particularly is build out our service and training module. So GrizzlyCorps, primarily our fellows are focused on their capacity building projects, their service, and all fellows that are full-time service members and AmeriCorps members complete 1,700 hours of service to the state in their communities. But something that GrizzlyCorps is really built upon is building out our workforce development pathways. We've done that through internal training, through orientation, graduation, seasonal in-person activities. We also have monthly cohort calls and guest speaker events. But one thing our program has really been seeking to also develop is the external training that our fellows can complete. And this is through courses and certifications, workshops and conferences that are catered towards their careers, but also trainings that fellows throughout the service year can bring directly back to their host sites. For example, we have fellows that will get their GIS certifications, will go to TREX, prescribed fire training exchange programs, and actually come back and support their communities in building prescribed burn associations. We have fellows that attend carbon farm planning and other California Department of Food and Agriculture programs in order for them to come back again, support their community in creating carbon farm plans, for example, if they're with resource conservation districts. We've also had fellows that have done wilderness first responder courses if they're working with youth, CEQA workshops, and also quite a few fellows that have completed the California Natural Stewards Program or the California Naturalist courses. These are all part of our program to both enhance where our fellows will go next, but then also really enhance the service that they're able to provide their host sites in their 11 months of service. Thanks to our amazing staff, as well as some of our former AmeriCorps members, we've also really focused on redesigning our curriculum here at GrizzlyCorps. And we've actually been able to do that in collaboration with the Othering and Belonging Institute, as well as the Greater Good Science Center through a pilot program that was sponsored through California Volunteers. And our curriculum that we provide through GrizzlyCorps is about 90 to 100 hours, typically minimum, that we provide to our fellows throughout the year. And it's really focused on the service impact. So really sustaining fellow energy and resources to be effective change agents in their communities, building a learning community. So building those healthy and resilient relationships between cohorts and also at their service sites, as well as individual support. So emphasizing the social emotional learning, the mindful leadership development of our fellows. So when they launch right into their careers, they're ready for it. So where are Grizzlies now? We've now almost finished up 3 cohorts, but from our first 2 cohorts of fellows, we actually have about 30% of our fellows that stay on in full-time roles with their host sites, though about 44% of them have actually been offered full-time positions after their 11 months of service. Typically, we have about 15% of our fellows attend graduate school immediately after their term of service. And then we also have about 15% of our fellows rejoin GrizzlyCorps for a second year of service, either in their same host site or with a new host site that we've brought on. And then we've had about 38% of them actually accept other full-time roles. But over 70% of those fellows actually stay in California, and over 85% of them are staying in natural resources after their terms of service. And then the last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was just our partners. As I mentioned, we have absolutely incredible partners. This upcoming year, we have a huge array of nonprofit organizations, federated tribal nations, resource conservation districts. We have University of California Cooperative Extension and research centers, land trusts, as well as many local public agencies that we partner with. Every single project that's part of GrizzlyCorps is completely unique. So if we have 35 fellows, we have 35 absolutely unique projects. And those because our host sites and communities design the projects. And so this is just a small array of the projects that some of our fellows will be working on, just to give you a sense of the vast, diverse range of projects that fellows complete. So we have anything from fellows working on supporting small-scale BIPOC farmers and healthy soil conservation and IPM practices, to supporting Feather River forests up in Plumas County, farms and youth, creating resilient rural communities, integrating racial equity and social justice into regenerative agriculture, as well as forest health and fire prevention, regional forest and fire capacity program outreach and engagement. So as you can see, we have a huge, vast array of projects and work that our fellows do. But most of all, it's about community. So our goals as GrizzlyCorps is for our fellows to feel part of their community in the service regions that they're in, and then also part of the larger GrizzlyCorps community. I think my favorite part of the program is seeing where our alumni go and bringing them back together. And this photo, I think, is a wonderful representation of this. This was 3 generations of GrizzlyCorps fellows all gathered together in our spare time after a service event we did with one of our partners, Marin Water. And even this upcoming year, we have about 30% of our host sites that actually have alumni, GrizzlyCorps alumni that are full-time staff at those different organizations. And this upcoming year, for the first time, we're actually going to have 3 GrizzlyCorps alumni that will be site supervisors for our fellows. So we've been really grateful to have this program. There's so much that has been done, so much that we're doing, and happy to talk about that further. But for now, I'll pass things off.
Thanks. Thanks, Eliza. We have a couple of questions. There seem to be a little more from me, though. But they're you can add if you have some thoughts as well. The first one is, did you take any organizational inspiration from the New Deal Civilian Conservation Corps? The answer is yes. That's relevant in a number of ways, in part because Jerry Brown started the California Conservation Corps, which had some relationship to the Civilian Conservation Corps, and I worked for many years for Jerry Brown and was quite interested in that program. The second is, do you have any methodology for determining an economic or public value of service? Eliza, do you have any comments on that so far? I have a thought.
You know, I wouldn't say I have a methodology for determining economic or public value myself, but something that we truly really rely on is our communities stating their needs. I think we have a deep trust and we have strong relationships with the agencies that we work with, and all of them represent the communities that our fellows are placed in, and that's really our focus, is community needs first.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're gonna in the coming year, we're gonna have a fellow working at CLE who's gonna look at the relationship of a lot of the projects that we work on at CLE in relationship to the GrizzlyCorps projects, and that may be a place to think about some of that public value as well. So thanks for those questions. And now I get to turn it over to Karen Lopez, who is one of our fellows. Karen.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I would just like to start with stating what attracted me to the program. Being a recent graduate at Fresno State, this was an opportunity that was placed forward in a career bulletin board on campus. And it was something that created intrigue because Fresno State, being in the central of agriculture and mass production for the county, is very focused on that mass production. And for me, coming from Sonoma County, I know that agriculture was something that I was always interested in and wanted to focus in based after the Tubbs wildfires that affected our community locally. And so seeing that there was the opportunity to provide back for my community in a way that based just on education as well as being outdoors, that was something that really drove me to apply. And so it fit perfectly just because I am from Sonoma County originally, and that allowed me to have that connection with the local community already. And so that definitely was the key thing that attracted me to this program, as well as the ability to grow as a professional. With this being my first job after graduating, this was a good opportunity to open many more doors, both for professional development, networking, and just getting to know my community better all around. And yeah, the entire program with GrizzlyCorps has been extremely supportive with where I plan to see myself in the upcoming years, with the educational possibility of going back to school for graduate school, as well as career development. GrizzlyCorps has been really great in providing funds for, like Eliza said, develop external opportunities. For me, this was more focused on conferences that educated on what Sonoma County and small farmers went through as challenges on the day-to-day basis. And yeah, during my year of service so far, it's been 10 months, and I have a little bit over a month and a half left to go. My program and projects definitely are more focused on educating the youth, as well as creating inclusivity for minorities in our community through different grants that Sonoma RCD is working with. And this was a really great way for me to know that education is something that I am passionate about, especially for our youth, just because they are the next generation. And I find it very rewarding to know that youth are definitely intrigued in where their food comes from, and natural resources, and how they can be the stewards of the land, even if they're just growing a little garden in their own backyard. And another thing that's definitely interesting about my position is that it is a bit hybrid. So I get to spend the days with kids on field days, and other times I get to be in the office and work on communications and outreach and researching, which covers all of my interests on what I want as a career. And so just the ability to be with the Resource Conservation District has really been rewarding, in the sense that I didn't know how much diversity it had in the different on the ground programs that it had, as well as education and with finding grants. And so being able to now know about this district and sharing that with the local community is something that I've become passionate about. And so for me, what's next is reflecting on a year of what did I like and what did I not like about this fellowship. And to be honest, I think everything about it has been great. I've enjoyed in realizing that my love and passion for educating and communicating is very high, and I hope to find a position that focuses on educating while also promoting local agriculture. and sustainable agriculture specifically, as well as having some office time to be able to really do more research and share that research forward with the community. That's something that I've always been passionate about, both in the natural resources and in agriculture realm. Yeah, and so for me specifically, with just being, I feel like I'm still so fresh out of college, this being my first stepping stone, I think I would like to have a few more years of experience on the ground, especially in Sonoma County, just so that I know my community a little bit better and I can create more impact. I feel like the more time that I have out on the field, the better focus for me as an education, and as well as for the community. And so after a few years, I definitely do plan on going back to graduate school. I'm not sure where that will be currently, but I know that I do want to focus on agriculture literacy, specifically with natural resource and agriculture education, communications, and as well as public policy and advocacy. Those have always been a key component in my interests in education, and I plan to pursue that forward. Yeah, and that's been my year so far. I have a month and a half left, which is looking great. A fun fact about year service is you never have a dull day. There's always something new that you learn. There's always a new experience, and getting to learn the places that you live in. Being in Sonoma County for all of my life, I thought I knew the ins and outs, but the Resource Conservation District has certainly allowed me to find new places that I never knew existed, and organizations as well as partners. So very grateful for all of that. Yep, and I'll give it back to you, Ken.
So Karen, what do you feel has been maybe the biggest challenge for you during the year?
I think the biggest challenge in terms of projects has definitely been the understanding as a fellow that there are resources out there, but just how do we find a way to share those resources to the community, especially if they are from a minority group. There are so many resources that the RCD has partnered with through CDFA and USDA that provide so much funding for on-the-ground projects, but just whether that is economical or a language barrier, that has been definitely a challenge that I've encountered throughout my year of service. So that's something that I would like to really increase my knowledge on and find a way to reach that community better.
Have you found in talking to community members anything that has either surprised you, maybe different from what you learned in school about agriculture, or things that people in the community, in the agriculture community, didn't know that surprised you or really kind of raised your eyebrow a little bit?
Coming from Sonoma County, I think I was already pre-exposed to a small-scale farming. But thanks to the California Small Farms Conference, I was able to understand that there's definitely individuals out there that are pursuing farming, but that there's challenges in entering the agriculture community as a small-scale farmer. So that was something that was definitely raised an eyebrow, because I thought that it was as easy as just buying land, but even that is definitely a hardship at times. And so finding resources like a way for farmers that are already kind of ingrained in the industry, wanting to assist those new farmers, that has been something that was great and I didn't know about beforehand, just because having that experience at Fresno State where everything was large scale, it seemed like it would be difficult for farmers to just enter. And then also because, as many of you may know, the average age for farmers has now been significantly increasing. It was kind of awesome to see that new generations and younger generations are wanting to enter the field, which is definitely motivating, because I have found that the younger generations are easier to acclimate to the new things that are considered sustainable for the land and for the soil, and water conservation, and all of the implements that connect natural resources to agriculture production.
It's great, thanks. And that's a nice segue to a question I have for Josh, which is, you're thinking about the next few years in really building up volunteerism, and I know you have a big focus on climate. What do you see as coming down the pike, and the relationship to the climate action program, and where are we heading?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thank you, Karen, for sharing all those experiences and telling us about what you've learned so far. It's super helpful, even for me to hear and understand how it's this is getting implemented on the ground. I think if we just look at the record of where the governor is, we're going to keep doubling down on this. We're seeing it work. We're seeing the impact that it has on individuals like Karen and the other alumni that Eliza showed, but we're also seeing the impact on communities of how really important work. Community gardens are being built, whole neighborhoods that have been underinvested in for decades when it comes to tree canopy that have turned into heat islands are now getting urban forestry projects done for the first time. So we're seeing the impact in communities around the state, and we're going to keep doubling down on it. The governor's proposed in this budget to double the size of our Climate Action Corps. And so we'll know in the next few weeks as that works its way through the legislative process where that lands. He's proposed to make ongoing our Youth Jobs Corps program, of which many of our Youth Jobs Corps members are doing climate related work. So I think there's a recognition that we have an opportunity through these service programs, not just to create economic opportunity through jobs that have stipends and scholarships and help create networks and professional skills that lead to jobs, but we also have a chance to rebuild our communities and create connections. I think that so many of us are looking for in a meaningful way. So we feel very much like we're just getting started, and GrizzlyCorps is very much on the ground floor of that.
Yeah, do you have any, you probably have some statistics on the number of volunteers that have kind of touched through your programs? Any numbers that you come to mind?
Yeah, so that we think about, there's sort of different levels. We actually call it a pyramid of engagement, where if you think about a pyramid, at the top is our service members. So those are people who commit to a certain amount of time, whether that's a summer or a year. And so we right now, over this coming year, we'll have over 10,000 service members. So these are Californians who have said that they're going to step up, like Karen, to serve and spend their time doing something meaningful. In the second tier of that pyramid, we think about volunteers. So maybe those who can't take a year to do a program, but on a Saturday, they want to volunteer, or every Tuesday they want to volunteer. And we know that just around climate, we've had literally tens of thousands of volunteers in California that our fellows, our Climate Action Corps members and our AmeriCorps members have galvanized and mobilized just around climate. And then at the bottom of our pyramid, we think about taking action. How do we create opportunities for every Californian to do things like composting or tree planting, things that actions they can take in their individual lives to make a difference on climate. So we're seeing a very exciting scale right now in this work, and we're just going to keep growing.
Yeah, it almost makes you optimistic.
It almost does. There's hope out there. We promise.
So Eliza, a question for you in the Q&A, and it said, can you elaborate on how GrizzlyCorps works with the UCANR California Naturalists and Climate Steward programs?
Yeah, we don't have a formal relationship with specifically with the Cal Naturalist and Climate Stewards programs. We do have a lot of our GrizzlyCorps fellows that take time as part of their they can essentially apply to our program to do service, and we even have a training stipend or trainings, and we have a training stipend. So we have quite a lot of our fellows that go through the climate steward programs as well as the California Naturalist programs. But more specifically at one of our partners for the past 2 years and for the upcoming year is UCANR's Hopland Research and Extension Center, and our GrizzlyCorps fellows there, and we'll have and then we'll continue to support with the delivery of the climate stewards class locally. And so that's our relationship there. We do have quite a few other UCANR placement sites as well. So we also support some of the cooperative extension, small farms advisors, and as well as the Hopland Research and Extension Center.
Great. And let me ask you this. You mentioned in your presentation that GrizzlyCorps is a fair amount of BIPOC, self-identified folks. How it's not so common necessarily for a rural program. How have you been able to really promote diversity in the group of fellows that you have?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from internal culture, ensuring that, as GrizzlyCorps, we're going to be a space that's inviting and inclusive. It's also primarily been about our host sites. So who are our host sites? Who are the communities that they're serving? What are the relationships like to the communities? And another component has been outreach. So thanks to my, former GrizzlyCorps fellows and then current staff, we've also built a lot of relationships with universities, nonprofits, also generally local communities in order to recruit a more diverse group of candidates to apply for our program. We also have a very, very intentional and very thoughtful placement process. It's a lengthy interview process, but we ensure that there's autonomy from both candidates and our host sites for final placement. And I think part of that intentional process ensures that, one, we don't lose candidates in the process. So having that autonomy, we also send out interview questions ahead of time. We have an interview guide for candidates, just really trying to think through the things that are going to be most supportive to ensuring a bit more of an equitable interview process as well.
Great. Karen, what advice do you have for people interested in the program, either in terms of how to be a strong candidate, or what to expect from the program when you get there?
With regards to the application process, it was a very straightforward, and like Eliza said, it definitely motivated me to continue along the path for the application. The website was a really great resource for potential applicants as well. It was a very in-depth, detailed page of the current projects and future projects and partners. So that was a great way that kept me motivated in aiming for a potential position with GrizzlyCorps. And could you restate that follow-up question?
Yeah, what would you tell people about the experience itself? What to expect, and maybe things that you didn't expect that you found over your year?
Yeah, some of the things that I didn't expect was the amount of diversity. Like I stated before, I thought I knew my own county pretty well before starting the year of service, but a key lesson in life that I learned is just there's always something new to learn, and there's always going to be a challenge, but I definitely am very appreciative and grateful of Sonoma RCD and my supervisor, just because they're all very supportive and they really care for the fellows during the year of service. They with regards to field visits or potential professional development opportunities and conferences and workshops, they're always there to answer any question and challenge you may have. I think for me, it was definitely a bit frightening at first, entering into a position as some would consider their first big job. And so really having a team that is open and supportive to answer any question, and knowing that no question is silly, it was very beneficial for me to know that, and to feel supportive. That I think that's a key thing that I would just like to reemphasize for anyone that's thinking of participating in the program is between supervisors, between GrizzlyCorps staff and fellows during our monthly meetings. It's always been a very knitted community. And so you're never alone in any step of the process.
Great, I'm glad to hear that. Eliza, what do you look for in terms of fellows when you're going through the review process? And I'll ask you the same question about what you look for in terms of sites.
Yeah, I think the beauty of our fellows is also the beauty of all of our host sites and projects, is that not one is very similar or the same or from the same background. And so we are looking for just a huge array of GrizzlyCorps fellows. We also are filling 35 unique different positions with different, qualifications looking that our sites are looking for everyone. So we definitely approach it from a mindset of, who's going to be a good fit for certain communities and projects. And then we also are looking for folks that are going to grow and learn in the program. So we're not looking for someone to come in with 100% of the qualifications that already knows or has experience. We're looking for recent college graduates that want to grow and learn in the program. And we also really do look for folks that have a strong desire for service and leadership. So those that have already given back to their communities or really want to do a year of service and see the program as both a professional development opportunity, but also a way to give back to a community. For host sites, I think the primary thing that we're looking for is that they already do have a strong and authentic relationship to the communities that they're serving. And then also that they are fully understand and want to be supportive to fellows. It's not an easy job to take on as a supervisor, to bring on someone for 11 months and then do it over again. And so we really owe it to our site supervisors for making the program what it is and for being that strong source of support.
Josh, AmeriCorps has some challenges, and it also has a lot of diversity. Do you know how many AmeriCorps programs you have in California? Just a rough guess.
Yeah, over 60 individual programs are in California. Yeah, and there are definitely some challenges, as you mentioned. For all this to work, it's a massive partnership between the federal government, the state government, the university, and all the host partners. And so there's a lot to coordinate, and there's a lot of expectations from the feds that we have to comply with. But it's obviously proven to be an incredibly successful program to engage people, create opportunity, have an impact on communities. And so we have several of those programs. Our College Corps program is at 46 campuses throughout the state, including UC, CSU, community colleges, and some private schools. And we work with well over 1,000 community hosts and community-based organizations throughout the entire state.
Do you have any sense of where you'd like to see programs going in the future, either existing ones or new ones to be established?
Yeah, we'd like them to scale, honestly. Yeah. I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's like, if we really think this stuff is as important as we do, and we see the kind of impact it's happening, having on Karen and others, we have to scale it. And so we need to grow. And we need to figure out, how do we create more opportunities for Californians to serve and actually have this opportunity? It's why working with universities we think is so critical. We think it should be embedded in the university and education experience, that part of what it means to graduate from a California school is that you've done service, or you are on your way to serve, that that's what it means to be a Californian. So our vision is very much that we have to keep growing and scaling, and that's just going to take enormous partnerships between universities, organizations, city governments. We're doing a lot with mayors right now that for the first time around service. So it's really thinking about how do we build the civic infrastructure, which you all are doing in a very real and impactful way. How do we build the civic infrastructure across the entire state so that not just, you know, a few thousand or tens of thousands, but ultimately every Californian has the opportunity to serve.
So I'll ask you the hardest question for last, which is AmeriCorps, between the federal and the state grant dollars, covers, you know, 60% of the costs of the program. And so the rest of the cost is covered by contributions from site partners who often pay a certain amount to have a fellow, and by donations. So I'm wondering if you've thought about how, and it's a challenge for programs, I can tell you, it's, you well know.
Yep.
Any thoughts about how we sort of make that challenge a little less challenging?
Yeah. Well, the easy answer is we just got to get more money in the game. And that's, I mean, that's the truth, honestly. And so I'll just point this out, not, you know, because this is not going to make you, Alex, or Ken, or any of your members of your team feel any better. But it's why with our Climate Action Corps, which is state funded, for the most part, we've taken away those barriers. We've taken away those match requirements. And we pay people up to $33,000 in the coming year for stipend, plus a $10,000 scholarship. That's more than the federal programs around just AmeriCorps pay for. Our College Corps program doesn't have match requirements for our community host partners. Those are state funded programs. So part of what I think is the innovation and the leadership of Governor Newsom in the state to recognize the challenge that you just outlined, and to say, okay, what can we as a state do to start to show what's possible if we invest in this in a real way, take away those barriers, but we have to show that it's successful, which is where we are now. So we're proving these models out, and then we have to scale them, and we have to get to a point where for all of our AmeriCorps programs and all of our service programs, we've taken away those barriers. So we're on the path. We're not there yet, but we recognize the challenge, and we just got to get more resources in the game. Yeah,
so I do want to thank you for, you know, really being an advocate for these programs, and, you know, feel like GrizzlyCorps has been a really good experience for me and for everybody who's gone through it. So thank you guys very much. Let me hand it back over to Louise to close out.
Great. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists. It was really great conversation. Thank you for everyone who attended today. Please be on the lookout for future Lunch and Learns. And thank you again to our partners, Wilson Sonsini, Oric, and Hanson Bridget, for helping make this series possible. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.